be on now? We must be on now, yeah. You did it, Alder Watson.
Yeah.
Now, if you just could turn the light back on, that you could do that over there, right? Well, it's good enough, I guess. I don't know.
Yes. Okay. Everybody had to be at the same place at the same time. All right. Thank you for waiting, but you can go ahead, I'll get this up.
Okay. Good evening, everybody. It is Monday, June 3rd, 2024, and slightly after 5:15, 5:18, and you are at the Parks and Recreation Committee for the City of Wausau. And up on the agenda is item number 1, approval of the minutes of the May 6th, 2024 meeting.
I move to approve as presented.
Motion has been made to approve the minutes from the May 6th meeting. Could I have a second? Second by Alder Lukens. Thank you. All those in favor, say aye.
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 None opposed. That passes. Item number 2, discussion and possible action to approve the intergovernmental agreement to provide services for the city of Wausau. I will open this up for discussion.
Do you need me to?
Actually, I could start if anybody else is. In looking through this, I'm not, I passed it up. I'm looking at the whereas, I don't, I kind of have a problem, how much, first of all, may I ask you, Jamie, how much money do we send to the county per year for this program?
It's what you budget. I do a budget just like Public Works, attorneys.
So you don't know that figure off the top of your head?
Well, I can look in our budget book. It's like 2.3 million, I think.
Okay.
That's the expenditures, and then we have about a $300,000 revenue that we bring in,
Okay.
and all that comes back to the city.
I just, for me, it says, it says where the Wisconsin statute on page 7, on the top, it says, Wisconsin statute section 27.050075.1 permits a county to exercise all powers of legislation. And I think that's where Jamie comes in and says where we have no power, and being on this committee, this is my third term on this committee, and I'm into my second year of my term, my 7-year term on the county commission. It's hard to devour this when we're sending millions of dollars to service our 39 parks, and we don't have anything to say about it. I think that, for our city parks, this is where the meat happens. This is where we discuss our city parks issues. As Alder Neal and I were discussing before the meeting, many things wouldn't have happened that came out of this committee.
Mr.
And-
Chair, if I could stop you for a second.
Oh, no,
There's
no,
two
you can't,
separate- Well, there's
Jamie.
two separate issues. You're talking about the committee versus the agreement.
Well,
So they're two different issues, and they're different on the agenda.
I'll open it up for discussion. Alder Rasmussen.
Thank you. So we talked about this a little bit in our committee the whole last Tuesday, and the agreement really, I think, is necessary and probably should have been done years ago to give some structure to the arrangement that's already happening. What we do with the committee, we can decide in the next item, but this really, I think, if we pass the agreement and move it forward, that then really outlines who is responsible for what in exchange for the money we spend. So we have, the way that this agreement is structured and the way they've written it up, it outlines the work they're already doing, that they already have the authority to do. But it does also give us a seat at the table in terms of accountability for performance, which today there is none of that. Right now, we approve a budget and we have the facilities and they go out and do the work, and they've been dutifully doing the work for decades. And yet there has never been a structure to that. We've been operating on what is probably legally the equivalent of like a resolution and a handshake, because there just isn't a document that outlines who does what for whom and when. And so I think that this really gives some strength to that arrangement where we know what we can expect. They know what's expected of them. And, you can measure that quality. And so there's nothing in here in the agreement that isn't already happening. And, as far as authorizing the county to operate the parks, that was done in 1974. And in the past, when we've asked about the city taking back its own park department or doing this work themselves or taking this back in-house like it was prior to 74, the operations are so deeply integrated now in terms of staffing and equipment. We were told back then, and this was in 2008, 9, 10, when we were first starting to talk about swimming pools, that it would be a historically expensive split because one half of the operation loses people and equipment, and the other party to the operation then has to staff up and buy the equipment they don't have, which no one wins in that proposal. No taxpayers win. The county taxpayers don't, and the city taxpayers, who are also county taxpayers, lose in that arrangement as well. So I feel like we should move the agreement forward so we have a firm backbone to what we're already doing. This really codifies the work Jamie does and her people do every day.
And I would like to add that I would not, as much as I'm in favor of an intergovernmental agreement, I'm not in favor of not having a say on how our parks are operated. And I think that it's a disservice to our citizens. Alder Watson.
So I just had a question and then I guess a comment. So question on number 7 on page 2 to 3, why is that highlighted? Is there any significance?
Yeah, it's something that the city attorney and I still need to figure out what goes there, if anything, because we have a separate agreement from 2003 that specifically talks to liability. So the question when we were going through this was whether or not this agreement even needed this paragraph in here. And if it did, does it just reiterate what was in that 2003? Because that had a term on it, but then it was a renewing. If it wasn't terminated, it just automatically renewed every year, and I think it's in the packet as well. or it was in a previous packet, but that is why it's highlighted, because it still needs to be finalized, correct? Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
And so this will be something that is reevaluated annually,
Yes.
right?
That's what, yeah, we have
Yep.
that in here, yeah.
And then I think it's a good move to have this just spelled out. Although we hope Jamie will be here for 30 years like her predecessor. You never know what's going to happen. And having this sort of written down, I think protects our citizens to make sure we get that coverage that we need, right? So I'm hoping we pass this and then we can discuss the committee. But I think also within this, it also spells out a little bit of our voice on the commission, which I think is sort of where our advocacy can really shine as a city, is on the Parks Commission. So thank you.
If I might add, I've been on the Parks Commission for 2 years, and I don't really think that city issues get highlighted there as much as they do here, and as much as they need to be.
They haven't yet, because we haven't been operating that way, and I covered that last Tuesday, that at some point in time, the past director started taking city things just to this committee and county things just to the County Park Commission, which is not how it was designed and not how it should operate. So that's not how it's gonna operate moving forward, whether you have a committee or not. Both things will go to the Park Commission. So that is a practice that was put in place for, we don't know what reason, but that's not how the Park Commission should operate. If it's gonna operate that way, then we need to go back and take the city council members off of the Park Commission, because there's no reason to have city council members on a Park Commission if it's only gonna talk about county stuff, which has been talked about. So it just hasn't functioned the way that it was supposed to, or in the way that it did before 2002, but it will again, and that's part of this whole process of cleaning this up, is that it will function like it's supposed to. And all city and county issues will be taken there, park-related.
Well, then, if we were to take control, if we were to have a little voice in our parks and in the money how it's spent, we could still have an intergovernmental agreement. Then you're right. We wouldn't need to have city employees at the county commission. Is there any other comments?
I guess, Mr. Chair, I guess inadvertently I was making a motion to accept the
Oh.
contract.
Motion has been made to
I'll second.
second by Alder Rasmussen. Any further discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed? Aye. Moving on to item number 3. Discussion and possible action to recommend the City Parks and Recreation Committee to change as an advisory committee from a standing committee. And I've asked the city attorney to come here today and please explain what would be the difference from an advisory committee to a standing committee.
Good evening, Mr. Chair and members. You asked me to look through the rules, so I would tell you first that Rule 13 of your council rules talks about committees, and you're all well familiar with the 7 standing committees, which are listed and which are ruled by Chapter 216, or governed by Chapter 216, meaning that ordinances or resolutions coming from those standing committees are passed on to the council for full vote through recommendations. That doesn't happen with committees other than standing committees, or what we call non-standing committees. So we have the Committee of the Whole, with which you're also all familiar, which can still make recommendations to the city council, but it's not a standing committee. Subcommittees are smaller units of the standing committees. So any of your 7 standing committees could appoint a subcommittee of a smaller number of its members to discuss or study an issue. A special committee is one to which non-alders or citizens can be appointed, and that's where you see your task forces and your special committees also to study particular issues that are temporary or more permanent. So an advisory committee is just that. It's there to advise whoever in the authorizing resolution or ordinance they are told to advise, like Bike and Ped advises ED, or Arts, the Arts Commission is supposed to advise the ED committee, and so on and so forth. So in my discussion with you earlier, as I pointed out, this is a little bit different situation, changing a standing committee to an advisory committee. It's not going to change whatever vehicle you use internally to discuss your issues or your concerns or your hopes and dreams for our city parks is not going to matter when it comes to how we communicate that to the county, because that's going to be our resolution or our contract with the county, the contract that you just discussed. Because this is a unique situation that's been created that we are now trying to clarify and iron out, whatever we want to maintain or delegate needs to be in that contract. How we decide or what vehicle you decide to use internally in the city to discuss those matters is completely up to you folks. But it occurred to me that we still have things such as contracts and things of other natures that still have to get approved through committee and council. So whether that comes from an advisory parks committee or a standing parks committee or finance or public health and safety, it still should come from another standing committee through to council to approve, like our athletic use agreement, our Seawalk agreements now for Sylvan Hill. It just occurred to me that there's lots of contracts and leases and things that get approved by council because of our procurement policy requiring that. And I was looking briefly in the park services agreement. Those are all outlined in Exhibit A, or the scope of services, which we are going to have a little further discussion with Jamie and Corp Council on. Because I'm not really clear where it says that you negotiate and leases and contracts and things on behalf of the city. I always thought the city did their own for the city parks, but be that as it may, you've now approved a recommendation to use the intergovernmental agreement as the vehicle to clarify that relationship with the county, and now you need to decide how, as a body internally, you want to communicate those ideas to the county in furtherance of that contractual arrangement. So it can be an advisory committee, it can be a standing committee, but there are still certain things that are going to be required to be brought to council because of our procurement policy.
Thank you, Dan. Alder
I
Nagel.
have a question then along these lines. If the Parks and Rec Committee, either as a standing or a advisory, with the new, agreement that we just voted on, wanted to do something, related to our parks, a park. And I mean, might be something procedural. It might be like expanding or limiting the hours of that it's open, or what color the fence is going to be, or any kind of strictly city park. It could even be right down to a particular park, or it could be across all the park systems in the city. What's our process and wherewithal as a advisory committee to achieve just things like that? What do we have to go to the finance committee seeking them to okay it? Do we have to go to ED? Do we go straight to council? I mean, things like this in the park system, they come up. All kinds of little things come up as well as big things. And for this is, like I said, my 9th year, going into Parks and Rec Committee work. There's been a myriad of things that we've dealt with from little to big. What does it look like now going forward for our processes? There's nothing in the packet, we're discussing this, but there's nothing in there showing me an A and B to compare. We're just discussing it at this
Well,
point.
and on your agenda tonight, I don't think we have the proposed changes in the ordinances either.
No,
So
but I think it would help our discussion
Right.
if we had, options in front of us or possible scenarios, examples of things that could come up. that might limit or
Contracting
not
being
limit
one
us.
of them. Operations is another good one that you point out, which is what I believe the Parks Department has been doing, are making the daily operational
Sure.
type decisions. But as you said, what's the process then going forward to communicate the city's desires? It's through the three people on the Parks Commission, correct, Jamie?
That's how
I
it
mean,
should
that's
be,
your
yes.
proposal. But when I look at the code references where we would have to change all the places Parks and Rec Committee appears in our ordinances, that all got sprinkled in there somehow. You're supposed to make recommendations to council about portions of plats that are to be dedicated for park purposes. You're supposed to make recommendations on vacation or alteration of parkland. You're supposed to hear appeals from orders of the city forester. Again, these would all have to be redesigned or reassigned somewhere else. They establish outdoor ice skating rinks, approve operation of snowmobile trails, supervise archery ranges, waive prohibitions on smoking and other special event requirements. So, I mean, there are a lot of things you've done and approved
Right.
agreements and contracts.
That's
like
why,
I've said,
in the agreement,
leases and-
I don't like seeing the words like, governing and legislating or whatever that are in there. I mean, when it comes to how we want to be able to have our citizens use our parks, to me, that's the purview of this committee, to, on their behalf, propose things, decide on things, and not just ask for things. I don't know that, the hours of operation at, our swimming pools is something that needs to go to a county commission. It just seems that we don't have a necessary division here with regards to what committees are empowered or not empowered to do. So it gives me a pause, and I know the chair probably feels this too, but I'm looking for clarity on this. So I'm sorry, I don't mean to
No, it's-
take over the
No,
discussion
they're all
here,
very
but-
good questions, which is why it's making it so hard to articulate all of these things in a contract or, in your description of your scope of services. But you have in there, you rent the park facilities, you rent the shelters, you put up the signage, you manage the pools. So you would decide when you're going to open and close them and staff them. I mean, unless we say specifically that's something we want to have input on and decide, and you will carry it out, then we carve that out and we put that in the contract, and it's in the authorizing resolution that we've retained these functions or duties to the city, or we've turned them all over to the county, with the exception, I think, of some of the contractual stuff that I still think the city has to do.
So I'm sorry, I'll let it go,
Oh.
but if there were something along these lines that I sort of outlined when I first started talking, as an advisory committee, are we even able to go to city council with it? If there's no, let's say, a direct financial, requirement, or it's a minor thing or whatever, are we able to make that decision? Do we have to go through council? Do we have to go through commission instead, or both? I mean, these things need to be outlined to us before we say what we want to be. So it's just not clear to me, and so I want to stay a standing committee until I can really feel like it's okay to not be one. That's where I stand right now. Pun intended.
Thank you, Alder Neal, and I feel the same. Alder Rasmussen.
Thank you. I think that, when we talked about going to our local discussion function in here, a non-standing advisory committee versus a standing committee, the model for that really is the airport committee, where the airport committee talks about all things affecting the airport. But when it needs to spend money or do the capital plan or do its 5-year planning, things that cost money, contracts, they review them, they make a recommendation on them, then that recommendation goes to finance, and then when the item gets to council, it's a dual item from airport and finance to the council. So there's like a logical process that it goes through.
Could I just interject one thing? It's just that they don't have the extra layer of the county.
Right.
I mean, they're a direct line to
Right.
to committees and council. So
Correct.
that's what I'm
Yep,
concerned
and
about.
I do think operationally, though, since our park department employees, whether they are, lifeguards or arborists or whomever, they're county employees. So directing the work and the time and all of that of county employees creates staff needs and costs for their department in their budget, even though it's charged back. So it would certainly make sense that the commission, because we have 3 members on there, would consider those things. So if we decided we were going to keep parks open longer, or if we were going to close them sooner, or, if that creates a different work task for the people at hand, they're their employees that we're using to achieve that work, it would make sense that they had a seat at the table for that discussion, even though we had 3 members sitting in there. My vision, when I talked to the city attorney and to the mayor about a non-standing advisory panel, was that this committee would continue to meet just like it is tonight. It's just that for legal purposes, we would be a non-standing advisory committee. We'd still have our same discussion. The results of our discussion would then be taken to the County Park Commission, and whatever items needed to be placed on the commission's agenda, there would be minutes of this discussion that took place here that our 3 members in common could use to communicate what the city wants to see happen when those agenda items come up on the commission. Ultimately, the decisions of this panel and the commission would have to come back to council for ratification anyway, because they affect our budget. So anything that costs money is going to have to go through council and finance. We know that anyway. But the airport committee actually interacts with the planning commission. When people want to build a hangar, they have to go to the plan commission and get approval for it. They go to the finance committee because they get a standard lease for the land. And then their items go to council. They go through CIP. They go through the budget process like any other. And before the budget proposals are made, that committee reviews the things that the airport is going to ask for. So they're very involved. We wouldn't be losing any involvement. I think the dialogue we have here, we'd continue to have it, probably at the same scheduled time. It's just that in terms of our function, we wouldn't be a standing body. And the thing is with a non-standing committee, you can adjust the membership as well. So right now, we're 5 alders. Non-standing advisory panels can include citizens. You could even add a user. You could add a facility user, a citizen at large to this if you wanted to. So broaden the discussion. And engage with the public differently if you chose to. You could change the makeup of a panel like that. So, I feel like going to an advisory panel protects our ability to have that local discussion here still. But it then also solves the problem of the committee that got created in 2002 or 3 that really didn't have the authority it thought it had. And it's been operating, I guess, outside the lines for a really long time. I think we'd achieve the same results. So, I don't think we would be giving up our ability to talk about things and secure outcomes for the city.
Would you then, Alder Rasmussen, go through all the ordinances then and change where Park and Rec Committee appears? Or would you leave all that authority in there as an advisory committee? But then you've got citizens on a
Right.
committee that's advising
Well,
about plats and
That's if we
snowmobile
decided to
trails
add
and-
citizens
right.
and just say, we
Yeah,
have that
no,
ability where standing committees can only have alders. But,
Sure.
I think that we'd have to take a look at where that committee appears
Mm-hmm.
and then determine where it's sensible to delegate that authority. If it's contract review for things that cost money, like the Woodchucks contract
Right.
or the Seawalk contract, that could very easily be done between the commission and finance. If it's contractual, because that's where the stuff ends up anyway.
Mm-hmm.
But if it's a matter of details like park hours, or, whether or not a facility gets asked for upgrades or whatever, I think that preliminary discussion would happen here. So where we appear in the ordinance, I think we'd have to see in what context. Because some of them are ministerial functions that the commission could fulfill, where we wouldn't need that extra stop.
And the other thing I found curious, Jamie, and maybe you can shed some light on this, I don't mean to take over your discussion, but in our ordinances and in the county ordinances, it talks about the committee approving all of these things, not the council. Usually our ordinances say the committee makes recommendations to the council as a standing committee, unless I have a resolution or something somewhere, or which created the standing committee, which doesn't exist, I would think in there, then they would have said that the council delegates all this authority just to this committee, the standing committee, to make all these final decisions, and I don't think I've seen that either, so that's also part of the cleanup of the
Well,
ordinances, I think, that needs to occur.
Standing or non-standing.
Right.
The committee should not be empowered that way. Any
Correct.
committee should report to council for final say.
So that's just another angle on the ordinances that I think needs
I wasn't
some
aware of that when I
clarification.
made my
Yes.
proposal, but I think that
Yep.
ought to get cleaned up.
Yep.
I just have one question. We have a resolution in here tonight, I believe it's agenda item 4. And so if this was a non-standing committee, would we be able to pass these resolutions?
You don't pass the resolution right now. It's just an example. That resolution goes to council still.
Well, okay.
Typically, the resolutions don't get put in this committee's packet ever. The city attorney's office just had it complete, so I put it in there for your
Well,
review.
it's in
'cause
here,
gonna
yeah.
go- It's gonna
on
go to
page-
council. You
It's on
don't,
page 28, so Alder Lukens.
Thank you. I guess before we would decide this, I'd like to see, I'm wondering what the negatives would be of going to an advisory committee. So I guess I personally would like to see, because there just seem to be so many questions or things that we aren't sure about, that I guess I would like us to be able to have something on paper to see that a little bit better. What, like, would the ordinances change? Would, whatever. I guess I would like to see that before making a decision on it. Thank you.
Thank you, Alder Lukens. Alder Watson.
I guess my question too is, I don't know, we keep talking about the park commission as being like a county commission, but isn't it part ours? Like, I guess, I know the description of it's housed on the county site, the agendas are all in the county calendar, but, I mean, we have as much, I guess, representation on that committee or commission that they do. So isn't it sort of ours?
is exactly yours, yes.
Two?
Yes, in 1974, per the resolution, the county got rid of their standing park commission. The city got rid of their park board, and they formed the joint park commission. So it is a joint park commission. And I have even talked to the city attorney about, should we be posting those agendas also on the city website? Because it is a joint meeting.
And I think
And we should be.
Right.
And on our calendar.
Because I think then if we sort of embrace that as that's our commission too, I think, I'm not sure who said this last Tuesday at the cow, but I mean, maybe it's just we haven't been tapping into that commission, and it hasn't sounded like the administration part has also been consistent. Like, it's gonna become like that go-to place for all park and rec things. So, I mean, if we would agendize it on our calendar, then citizens would know about it, council people would know about it, be able to weigh in on it, just like I can for, ED or any of those kind of commissions. So, I don't know, I guess maybe it's just taking ownership, like, it's not theirs, it's both of ours, right? And just taking that stake in it.
That's a good point. Because of the 7, there's a 1 citizen member, so neither the county nor the city representatives have a majority
Correct.
on the committee. And it acts independently, correct? None of its actions go to county board.
The park commission, yes, some actions do, just like some go
Okay.
to city council. So
Okay.
if we have a budgetary or a staffing thing, basically a budgetary thing, 'cause staffing would be that, or budget items or capital improvement projects, those type of things, they go on the county side, just like so on the city side, it would go from park commission to city finance to city council. On the county side, it goes from the park commission to the environmental resources committee. That's our standing committee we have to go through. And then it goes to county board, or it may go to HR and finance committee prior to county board, depending upon what the budget item is. So
Okay.
there is a process for that too. The park commission is where policy can be made and operational discussions take place. That unless they are changing something that needs to go to city council or county board, the park commission would have that authority.
Got it.
I might add that, with all these changes that are supposed to be going on with the Parks Commission and stuff, to put more city input in there. I think I would have to, before any motion, I'm just going to side with, we'll see how it goes. And I'm gonna stand with the standing committee for now, but I'll take a motion. Alder
Well,
Asmussen?
before we even take a motion, I guess, would it be appropriate for us to give Ann the opportunity to take a look at those ordinances, figure out where the employee or where the committee appears, and she could kind of itemize for us a little bit, at least in broad terms, what things would be affected, so we can see where we would need to first change committee to council, which is probably wrong to start with, and then, like, see where we would need to codify the commission versus the committee, or retain the committee. I think you could have 3 different outcomes depending on what it is. So, I mean, and that would, if we would, like, hold action on this item, because now we've got the contract part handled, if we would hold this up, give her the month to look into that, and then next month maybe make this choice, because we could maybe know more about how many ordinance changes we need. Is that not enough time, or do you think
Oh, I
you
think
could?
that's plenty of time. You all had that list when we were reviewing the duties of the
descriptions.
standing committees, which I've just about finished putting together the whole report. But Parks did meet on this, and you did get, everybody would have had that in a past packet. But we can certainly recopy that, get that out to everybody so that you can see.
Well, and we have new members now too,
Because in
so.
talking about changing all our ordinances and theirs and making those consistent at the same time we try to negotiate a contract and decide what we're going to do with our committee, we have to figure all of this stuff out. So we've kind of hammered through all this and tried to figure out, well, what do you replace Parks and Rec Committee with then? Is it finance or park commission, or,
Right.
to Tom's question, you're saying this is a joint commission then, where things would come back to the city in the way they'd go back to the county if it required city action, like a finance
Yeah, no different than what we do now.
thing. Okay.
Just go to the park commission like it's supposed to be.
But you'd have joint items that would be commission and finance, or commission and, plan commission, or whomever, wherever the,
Yep.
we've already had overlap between parks and public health and safety when we did a smoking ban and stuff like
Yeah.
that. And we had a prohibition on snakes and stuff, and we had all kinds of things that we managed in public health and safety for parks, and those were joint items. They would just be joint between our committee, the commission, in the committee's stead, and then still come back to the council. So we still have a lot of purview. I mean, the council ultimately is going to make the final decisions anyway. So I feel like we're not losing much by becoming a non-standing body, because we still meet, we still have a local discussion, and we have members in common. So then our commission members, in preparing for their county commission meeting, will remember these discussions, because they're here. So that's where I think if we would just not act on this tonight, let's take the month, have Ann take a look at what changes we would need to insert. Would that be better?
Alder Watson?
With the cleaning of the ordinances and that kind of thing, is there any potential changes that would need to be made to the contract that we approved, or pretty much
Oh, yes.
Okay.
Yes.
No,
So
not
I'd
to the
rather,
contract, I don't think.
pardon?
to the
Contract of
contract?
services that they just approved, I don't think so. That just does what we do now. It doesn't say anything about the committee. It talks about the park commission. It
Right.
just follows the ordinances.
I'm not arguing with you over that. I mean, other than the two that are highlighted, obviously, you know how I feel about that. I have not talked to Michael Pierner about these, but
We have to.
there's some minor tweaky language changes I would make, like under 14, the procurement, that you'll follow all the county's procurement procedures.
And your office reviewed this contract, and so did the Corporation Counsel's office before it came here.
I know.
So the changes that, the contract that's in front of the Parks Committee today, as well as the Park Commission, is the final contract that I was given by your office that Michael reviewed at Corporation Counsel's office. So why are there changes at the table? I'm not
Well, because I
understanding.
think the council has an opportunity to discuss it. I mean, yes, you drafted it with Corp Council. You sent it over. Tegan from my staff reviewed it. Now that we're getting down into the weeds over committees and committee structures and everything else, I'm looking back through it and the contracting and what needs to go to council, and I'm looking mainly at your addendum, where it says you negotiate and approve city contracts and leases. I mean,
Yep, I do that. I'm the one who negotiates with the woodchucks, and then I bring it through the committee, and it goes to the council for approval.
okay, I see what you're saying. I would
Yes.
just, okay, word that a little differently. Recommend to the city ordinance changes, review city special event permits, and coordinate with the city clerk.
Yep, all that's done.
Select all equipment necessary to perform and carry out city park programs. Contract for planning services on behalf of the city. Request grant funding and administer the grants. Contract for appraisals. Negotiate with the owner for acquisition of property, I'm assuming, approved by the city.
If the city has asked us to go out and look at property, then yep, we do negotiation. It still comes back through council for approval.
Wow, I didn't know all that was
I mean,
going
we
on. I
haven't
guess
done-
I would have assumed I would have been doing
I mean,
that. That's
I
why I
haven't-
looked at that language
I
again and
haven't
I'm
done
like,
that in my
whoa.
time here, so the city doesn't buy land, parkland, so I haven't done that in my time here.
Okay.
But that was part of,
Yeah, I'm not
job
upending
description.
the whole contract. I'm just saying I'd like a further discussion on some of these items just to clarify them with Mike. That's all.
Alder Lukens.
Yeah, I think that what would, like I said before, what I would really like before we make any other decisions on this is to, what would be helpful for me is a diagram even, even if it's drawn out, but, you know, the, like, commission, you know, advisory committee or advisory council and standing committee, like what, just some way, it just seems like it's so complex. And this has such a history that I don't want to make any further decisions until this is clear in our heads. So, I mean, I guess that just my feeling on this, you know, the commission meetings I did attend, and maybe that's what's going to be different. I didn't get to attend very many of them, so I don't know if city, are you saying that there would be more city,
all city
Issues-
items I have will go to the park commission.
okay,
And
so
all county park items
so
I have will
that's-
go to the park commission.
that's different from a couple of years ago?
Yes.
So I think that's what's hard too for us to envision, because that's not how it has been happening. So I think part of, I don't know about everyone else, but for me, the hard thing is that, you know, that's not what's been happening. And I'm not like placing blame or anything like that. I'm just trying to explain why it's hard, because we're like codifying this agreement, but yet in practice, that's not what's been happening. So I think that's where that like giving up control part comes from, because that's not, you know, what has been happening in practice. So anyway, my point is I would like to know on some of this stuff exactly, I would like to know from the city attorney what, you know, what would change anyway, before I will make further, you know, any further decisions, before I would vote to change from a standing committee. So thank you.
Alder Neal, did you have your hand out?
Sure. Well, I mean, just hearkening back to the agreement, you know, we do know that it will be going to council anyways, and it might go through slicing and dicing there for all we know. I mean, I can't predict what any particular alder might say or take a issue with, but there are things in here I think that are going to come up into discussion where there's something like, you know, delegated to Marathon County, the authority. So it doesn't say to the Marathon, or it doesn't say to the Parks Commission, it says to Marathon County. It doesn't say to a, you know, a intergovernmental commission, it says to Marathon County. I could see somebody going, well, what is that all about? To govern, to manage, to run, to make all decisions? But it's like, wait a minute, you know, who's Marathon County? Is that the board? But that's what this says. I mean, it's going to come up, and we'll probably have a nice long night talking about something as friendly as Parks and Rec. Because of just issues like this, I can foresee it, and I'm sure I'll be part of it too. So,
Thank you, Alder Neal. Alder Rasmussen?
Thank you. Yep, just a final comment. I think that part of the confusion is that, like Carol said, we haven't been using the commission appropriately. And so, and I've not served on the county commission, but I had served on this committee from 2008 to about 2011. And my understanding then was that that committee existed because, like Jamie said in our presentation at the committee of the whole, there was some personality tensions that had erupted in terms prior that caused a former mayor to want a venue for a deeper local conversation. That was all it was about, was a deeper level of local discussion. And so that got created. And so then items started only going there. Well, I've had former council members say to me, they felt that their seat or them sitting on the County Park Commission as it's been operating was a complete and total waste of their time, because they're weighing in on decisions for facilities that are not our facilities. And so they said, you go and you sit there for 2 hours and you listen to all of this, and none of it's our stuff anyway. It should have been. And it will be. And I said, I think that is where we are getting ourselves to a better place. Once we figure out the codification of the ordinances, I think using the commission properly is the key. And had we been all along, and I think part of the trouble we had in the last term was that the meeting time was difficult for people to attend. And so there were times where all of our city seats weren't filled and discussion was happening, but they weren't about our facilities anyway. So going forward, I think it'll be important that our members that are duly appointed are engaged in that discussion, because the items will be totally relevant to stuff that they experience here at the city and not just county facility related items. So it'll be a way better utilization of your time, because now the stuff has relevance, but in the past, we just were not using the commission appropriately. And so, I think we should take this month to have them hammer out some of these logistics so that we can kind of see what the impact would look like. The contract, I think, is good the way they have it, because it lines up everything they already do. We know, and we really were not complaining about the way stuff operated. We just wanted some formalization as far as each side's expectations. So we got that. But I do think that we should take the time between this meeting and our next one, just not act on this. Let's just hold action on this. Give Ann some time to hammer through the logistics, and we'll get a report next time, and then maybe we'll feel better about making a decision. Because I think if they can get us to a place where we can understand how it looks when we use the commission the way we should have been all along, we can get over the hump about giving up control.
Okay. Is everybody okay to table this till next month then? Okay, Alder Lukens.
Sorry, I just wanted to say, and if Ann, needs more time than that too, then I would
I'm going to
just.
try to make it work to keep things moving along. I
Yeah.
think a month is very fair. I think
Okay.
we can get that done. But now you've recommended approving the intergovernmental agreement, which you're still okay moving forward with, but hold on the going through the ordinances and things of that nature. Okay, makes sense to me.
Okay. Then on to item number 4, discussion and possible action approving contract with Travis Bellman Home and Trail for the 2024 Sullivan Hill Mountain Bike Park Flow Tech Downhill Mountain Bike Edition. Jamie.
So this is just coming to the committee because it's just a continuation of a previous project that was already approved. And this is the last part of that. They had it in stages. They just didn't get it all completed in 2022. So I have it going to you, just time sensitive, because we needed to get it to council for approval. Typically, these contracts don't have to go to council, that I learned from Tegan and the corporation counsel's office, or not corporation, the city attorney's office, but the last one did, so we'll just put this one through like we did the last one. Otherwise, I would have put this one on the park commission agenda tomorrow, but because it's time sensitive, I want to get it on council, and it's just a continuation of a project previously approved.
Well, and I think I'd add that Tegan's memo, with which I agreed, also said that because it's under 25,000, it's not public construction, so you can select the higher quote. However, you should still publish, the statute requires the publication of a Class 1 notice prior to the execution of the contract.
Yeah, you'll have to help me with that. I told her I don't know what that is.
Okay, well, we'll help you with that.
I'll move to approve.
Alder Neal? Second? Okay, a motion has been made by Alder Rasmussen and seconded by Alder Neal to approve item 4 on the agenda. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. And that passes unanimously. Item number 5, I'd like to remove from the agenda, if that's okay with the committees, because the fact that we discussed this last month, and it's in the minutes for last month that this committee will meet at the first Monday at 5:15.
Mr. Chair, if I may, and I told you this on the phone,
No, you may not, Jamie.
this was discussed because this is to do with the Parks Committee, so it needs to be postponed with your discussion of the Parks Committee, because if you do make that an advisory committee,
No, Jamie,
this
you're,
meeting time doesn't
Jamie,
work, so we won't
Jamie,
have
you're
the
out of
meeting.
line.
Well, we won't have the meeting then because it
You're
doesn't
out of
work.
line because
Okay.
I told you over the
I'll
phone, the
check
fourth
with you.
Monday, I told you over the phone that I would not put my name on an agenda.
And I changed it.
Because
I took off the
I
fourth
would not
Monday.
take the fourth Monday off. And
And I
I
took
don't
that off.
see, well, I'm going to the committee here. Does there, we made the decision on Monday. It's been meeting on the first Monday for years and years and years. We made a decision last month. Is there any reason to change?
Yes, I have a question. Why the fourth Monday? I mean, it kind of,
I took off the fourth Monday because the other Lou said that he couldn't make it that fourth Monday. That's why it's revised. And it's a discussion that if you change this meeting to a standing committee meeting, and it's going to make recommendations to the Park Commission. The Park Commission meets the Tuesday before the first Thursday of every month. Meaning, if you're going to make recommendations and have them go through in a timely manner, this Monday, the first Monday of the month, doesn't always work. It will end up being a week later than your Park Commission meeting on certain months.
okay, so you would need us to meet prior to that, and
that
so
is my
wrapping it up at
recommendation.
the
I just
end.
looked at the city calendar as far as other meetings go. I didn't know what personal meetings people had. I mean, that's why I threw it out there. When he called and said he couldn't make that, I made that change. That's why it's in red on your amended agenda. Just for discussion, that if you want to make the progress flow through of information that you'd like to go to the Park Commission, if you decide to go that route, and I would advise just taking this off and postponing it and having the discussion with the committee discussion, because if you choose to not go that route of a standing committee, then maybe it doesn't matter and this date can stay. But if you choose to go to an advisory committee where things need to go through the Park Commission, this date does not work for timely
Well,
matters to go through
not if we'd have
properly.
some months where it gives you a day to turn it around. So,
It wouldn't even be that. Some months it might be a week later.
right. I agree. I think we should hold up on any decision about anything until we decide what we're going to be. You know,
Well-
I mean, right? I mean, if we make a change to the structure, we may have to pick a different date. Maybe not the fourth Monday, but we may have to pick some different date to make everything work properly.
I can't make the fourth Monday because that's our neighborhood meeting night, so I mean, and then after my phone call with Jamie, I looked in the minutes and I saw that we had made that decision already last month, so that's why I had asked to pull it from the agenda.
Let's just wait then, and until we decide on what we're going to be as a committee next month, maybe we could take that up after.
Is everybody okay with that? Okay, item number 6, educational items. Park updates, Jamie?
These park updates we usually do each month of just what's been going on. Lots been going on since we're getting our facilities up and running for the summer. A lot of different construction at Athletic Park. We had another broken valve, so we just put that as you could see we were doing work along Wausau Avenue. Pools opened on Saturday, all but Schulenburg. We're having some issues with the pump and the heater there, so hopefully we'll have that up and ready by this weekend. But Kaiser and Memorial both opened on Saturday. We're still working to complete the restroom at Oak Island. We're waiting on that door still for the the family bathroom, but everything else is done. Landscaping is being completed. Urban forestry, you can see there's lots of street damage from the storms we've had going through. We did have a tree planted at Alexander Airport Park in honor of Pat Peckham. And then general maintenance, as you can see, cleaning up homeless encampments, ball diamond use, kayak fountain isn't been on because we've had trouble finding the grates that are around the bottom that keep getting broken when we just, not when we do snow removal, but when a different department does snow removal. So we're trying to figure out a better system for that so it doesn't break every year. And then we have some sound system repairs at the 400 block. If there's any questions, I'd be happy to answer them.
Yes, where were the homeless encampments? Were they in parks?
They were all in parks, yes. I don't know exactly where they were. They were in parks. We don't clean up the ones outside of parks.
And you talk about the 400 block speakers. Is there anything going to be done with the face of the stage?
Yeah, we're waiting for the contract. It's already been signed, but we're waiting for the.
So it will be renovated.
Well, the seams and the caulking within the seams will be fixed.
Yeah, that's what I kind of meant. Alder Neal.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Is this on?
It should be.
Okay, now we are. All right.
Yeah.
Thank you. I haven't been down to River Life in a while, but last time I checked, the drinking fountains, weren't operational.
The leaping fountains? Not the drinking fountains. The leaping fountains or the drinking fountains?
Drinking fountains, perhaps the shower installations on the dock, any other water-related, things. Are those operational now? I mean, it was for quite a long while they weren't.
Well, the shower at the wharf and the drinking fountain there have never been operational because
Right.
when that construction happened, they cut those water lines, and it was supposed to be fixed with the new building that goes in because it's on that private property or the city property there. So that was supposed to go through. It was part of the conditions of this last developer that now has left and decided not to build there. So that there's no funding for that, but that's when it's supposed to take place. And that's at the wharf, but we've had no requests for them either. So.
Do we have any idea what it might cost the city to replace this or repair this line?
We can find out, but I do not know.
Yeah, because if there's money in the existing, contingency fund, I don't, might be something we can deal with. I mean, it's a little embarrassing to me to have, an amenity like that that's for years, but not operational, and it's sitting there looking real nice but not working.
Anything else, Jamie?
Nope.
Okay, then on to item 7, future agenda items.
Just the two you tabled.
Okay, then.
Motion to adjourn.
Motion by Alder Neal to adjourn. Do I have a second? Second by Alder Rasmussen, or Alder Watson, I'm sorry. All those signify by saying aye.
Hi.
Aye. And that passes unanimously. Thank you.